was finished with the show and went to either the suite in the hotel or went to the car going there, did he need people to be a little bit quiet around him?
Yes,
so he could just relax?
he would. What would happen is, after the shows, when I was on tour with him and the concerts and things, I would be ushered out first. So I would never be there at the last song. I was already ushered. One of the guys would take me to the car. I'd sit in the middle of the back seat of the limousine, and I would hear the music, but I wouldn't hear what he was singing. And I would hear, "Elvis has left the building," because it was really loud. Then I knew, boom, he's going to be on his way. That door opened. Joe Esposito, Dick Grobe, Al Strada, whoever it was, ushered him in the car. They threw a white towel around his neck. They literally held him, usually on both sides, because he was blinded by the lights. He had glaucoma. He was blinded by all the flashbulbs coming at him for an hour and a half, or however long. So he couldn't see. And usually you have stairs that go down because the stage is up. So he couldn't even see the stairs, and there's no way they're going to let him fall and break a leg or hurt his face or break a nose or something. So they held him by the sides and, held him to go down the stairs, ushered him quickly to the car, because the girls were literally standing around the car. They'd wait at the exit, the rear exit, to try and rush him.
Because they knew that he would go straight to the car. They went off earlier just to be
Exactly. So they would rush him. Elvis, going to have an autograph, or try to paw at him or something. So he would be rushed to the car. I mean, these are the days when that happened. I don't think they even happen anymore. Those were the days when that was clearly something to never see. Between that and the Beatles, you don't see that kind of behavior anymore. You just don't. So they would usher him to the car. He'd get in the car, close the door, lock the limo, and that car would be gone in 2 seconds. I mean, it was that fast, that fast. And as we would leave, the girls would be on the window. "Elvis! Elvis!" I mean, just, you could see him, hear him, and he would just kind of sit like this, and he'd put his hand up, waving, like, and he'd be sopping wet. The car would be silent. You don't say a word, not one word. He needs to come down. He needs to begin to relax. He is, crazy from all of it, and he's exhausted. Exhausted. So I let him be. I usually had a towel on my lap or on my left. They were always the white towels. And I would start to dry him off. I would dry his face off, his hair, brush his hair back, his neck, maybe his chest. And if he had one of the belts on, and I'll tell you a funny story, remind me to tell you this story, the belt would be tight. I would undo the belt and take it off, or slip it behind his back and take it off so he could breathe and open up, and pat him down. And his hands would be just like wet and bloated, because he had all the big rings on, for the stage. Those were his stage rings. He wore different rings for the stage and different rings for personal life. And sometimes, he'd interchange, but mostly he had his stage rings. And they were usually larger, more sparkly, different. And normally the rings he would wear at home or just out were smaller, maybe a black diamond, or one of his little animal rings. He loved the animal jewelry. But
he also had
he had the Band-Aids.
Band-Aids to save that they were not taking off his fingers.
Yeah,
while he was getting
and because the girls would sometimes either try or just try to get him to just hold their hand even, or to touch them, he would have scratches everywhere. So not always, but sometimes they would be.
Did he then get some cream on the hands, or what did he get?
Yeah.
Because infections and things like that, I think.
Well, he didn't really, but he didn't get infections. But I would take the Band-Aids off, but his hands would have to come down from the swelling because they were swollen. So I would take the Band-Aids off, and then if I could pull the ring off or twist the ring, I would take it off and usually put it in my purse for safekeeping, the belts in my purse for safekeeping, dry his hands, and then he'd usually put his head back and his mouth would open and he'd just go, like that, and he would just breathe. And he would start to meditate, because he meditated a lot. So he would put his head back, mouth open, and breathe. Nobody would say anything. You only spoke normally if you said, "Great show, E." "Boss, that was a great show." That was about it. And then he'd say, "Did you like it? Did you really like it?" Then maybe after a while he'd start to talk. When he started talking, the guys would start talking and answering and this. "Hey boss, you want some water?" And he'd always have his Mountain Valley water in the green bottle, and he'd always have that in the car and everywhere around him. He'd drink a ton of water. And then we would drive off, and he'd be usually staring out the window. You see pictures of him just staring out the window like this, right? A very normal picture for him. And a lot of people on Facebook, his fans will message me on Facebook, or they'll ask me a question and they'll say, "What was he always staring out the window? Was he thinking about his mother? Was he thinking about a certain person? What was he thinking?" And I said, none of the above. None of the above. I said, the fans always want to make it more dramatic, oh, he was this, he was that. No, he wasn't. And finally, one time I asked him, I said, "Honey," I said, "you're always staring out the window." I go, "What are you thinking? Are you able to share anything with me?" And he would stare like this. He would look back at me like that. And he would say, "You really want to know?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I really want to know. What are you thinking?" And he said, and he'd point his finger and he'd touch the window pane and he'd say, "I can't believe they all came to see me." He said, "Can you believe that?" And I would look at him, I go, "Of course they came to see you." He said, "Oh no," he says, "but look at all the buses, the tourist buses, and all the cars, and the taxis, and all the people walking." You see, "I can't believe they all came to see me, my show."